She didn't meet him in a dark alley. She met him in a room full of light. Tall windows stretched from floor to ceiling, pouring gold across marble floors polished enough to reflect a person back at themselves, clearer than a mirror, harsher than truth. A string quartet played something slow and deliberate. Not sad. Not happy. Just controlled. The kind of place where no one raised their voice. The kind of place where power didn't need volume. Men in tailored suits stood in small circles. They spoke softly but listened hard. Every word carried weight. Every pause carried meaning. The air smelled of old money and newer ambition. She didn't belong there. Not in the way they belonged. She had been invited by someone who'd insisted it would be good for networking. She'd borrowed the dress. She'd rehearsed small talk in the taxi. She'd told herself she was just as capable as anyone else in that room. But capability and confidence aren't the same thing. She wasn't looking for protection. She was looking for space to breathe. And that's when he noticed her. He didn't stare. He didn't smile. He didn't do what other men did, scanning, measuring, categorizing. He simply said her name. Amara. Not a question. Not a guess. A fact. That was the first thing that scared her. She turned slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter something invisible between them. He stood just close enough to be heard over the music without leaning in. Dark suit. No tie. Silver cufflinks. His posture was relaxed, but nothing about him was careless. "How do you know my name?" she asked. His gaze held hers without demanding it. "You look like someone who doesn't want to be here," he said. "I made inquiries. People like him didn't notice people like her. They used them, or ignored them. She'd learned that early. Men with influence collected people like accessories. A woman who listened well. A woman who smiled on cue. A woman who made them look softer than they were. Yet here he was, offering something no one else ever had. Not a drink. Not a compliment. Not a proposition. An exit. "Stay close," he said quietly. "No one will touch you." She should have asked the price. But safety has a way of making people forget to ask questions. He didn't offer his arm. He didn't guide her physically. He simply began walking toward the balcony doors. She followed. Not because she trusted him. Because she trusted the certainty in his voice. Outside, the city hummed 20 floors below. The balcony lights were dimmer. The air was cooler. The music faded into something distant and almost imaginary. "Why?" she asked once they were alone. "Why what? Why me?" He rested his hands lightly on the stone railing. "Because you don't belong to anyone in that room." The words landed harder than they should have. "And that matters to you?" "Yes." He didn't elaborate. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't awkward. It felt measured. Intentional. "You're afraid," he said after a moment. "I'm cautious. You're afraid of being seen." She swallowed. He was wrong. He was exactly right. "I've spent a long time making sure I don't stand out," she said carefully. "And tonight I needed to." "For what?" "A chance." He studied her then. Not her body. Not her dress. Her. "A chance at what?" She hesitated. He waited. That was new. Most people were silent because it made them uncomfortable. He used it like a tool. "At building something of my own," she finally said. "Without owing someone for it." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Owing someone," he repeated. "You understand the concept." "Yes," he said quietly. "Better than most." Back inside, conversations shifted when they re-entered together. Heads turned. Not dramatically. Subtly. He didn't touch her. But proximity is its own language. A man with a red pocket square approached. "I didn't realize you were attending tonight," he said to him, polite but strained. "I wasn't," he replied. And yet. The man's gaze flicked to her. Assessment. Ownership calculation. Threat evaluation. "She's with me," he said calmly. "Not possessive. Protective." It changed everything. The man smiled tightly. Of course. He walked away. Her pulse was loud in her ears. What just happened? She whispered. You were about to be offered an opportunity, he said. That sounds harmless. It wouldn't have been. And now? Now you're inconvenient. They moved through the room together. He introduced her to people, not as decoration, but as an equal. This is Amara. She has a proposal you should hear. He didn't explain it to her. He didn't embellish. He gave her the floor. The first time she spoke, her voice wavered. The second time, it steadied. By the third conversation, she wasn't aware of him standing beside her. Until someone asked, "And how do you two know each other?" She paused. So did he. His answer came first. "We don't," he said. The room laughed lightly, assuming it was a joke. It wasn't. Hours later, the event thinned out. She found him near the windows again. "You orchestrated that," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you needed to be seen by the right people. And you're one of them." "I'm not the right person for you," he said. That wasn't what she'd expected. "You said no one would touch me." "They won't. Because of you." "Yes." "And what do you get?" His gaze shifted to the city again. "Peace of mind. That's not currency in that room." "It is to me." She learned his name from someone else before he ever offered it. Elias. A name spoken with caution. A name attached to industries, negotiations, and quiet takeovers. Not ruthless. Precise. Not loud. Effective. She looked him up later that night. Articles. Interviews. Photographs. He looked the same in every picture. Controlled, unreadable. But she'd seen something different on the balcony. Recognition. The next time they met, it wasn't by accident. She sent a message through one of the contacts he'd introduced her to. A meeting request. He accepted. Not at his office. Not at another glittering event. A quiet cafe at the edge of the financial district. Neutral ground. "You could have ignored me," she said when he arrived. "I don't ignore potential. I'm not an investment." "No," he agreed. "You're a risk." "Why?" "Because you don't want to owe anyone." "And that bothers you?" "It intrigues me." She tested him. Over weeks. Small questions. Hypotheticals. He never flinched. Never pushed. Never offered more than she asked for. But he was always there. At meetings where tension rose too high. At negotiations where someone tried to corner her. He didn't interfere. He observed. And his presence alone shifted outcomes. One evening, after a particularly brutal pitch session, she confronted him. "I don't need a bodyguard." "I know." "Then what are you doing?" He looked almost tired. "Making sure you don't become what they are." "And what are they?" "Hungry without restraint." "And you?" "I'm hungry," he said. "But I choose my meals." She laughed despite herself. "That's not comforting." "It's honest." Months passed. Her proposal gained traction. Investors called her directly now. Not because of him. Because she'd proven herself. But everyone knew. No one touched her. No one undercut her publicly. No one tried to buy her silence. And that kind of protection has value. One night, standing on the same balcony where they first spoke, she asked the question she should have asked on day one. "What's the price?" He didn't pretend not to understand. "For staying close," she clarified. He faced her fully this time. "No price. That's impossible. Not everything is a transaction. In your world, it is." A pause. "In my old world," he corrected. She studied him. "You're changing it." "For you." He shook his head. "No." "Then why?" "Because you reminded me I could." The music inside swelled again. Different events. Different faces. Same tall windows. Same city below. "You still scare me," she admitted. "Good." "Why is that good?" "Because it means you're not blind." She stepped closer. Close enough to feel the warmth of him. "But I'm not afraid of you anymore." His voice dropped, softer than she'd ever heard it. That's more dangerous. For who? His hand hovered near hers. Not touching. Not yet. For me. And in that room full of light, where power whispered instead of shouted, she realized something. She hadn't been looking for protection. She'd been looking for power she didn't have to steal. And he hadn't been offering ownership. He'd been offering distance from the wolves. The kind of distance only another wolf could create. "Stay close," he said again, months after the first time. But this time, it wasn't a command. It was a choice. She looked at the room. At the men who now nodded when she spoke. At the doors she'd opened herself. Then back at him. "I will," she said. Not because she needed safety, but because she wanted him beside her. And for the first time, neither of them was afraid to ask what that might cost. Here's a deeply expanded continuation, layered with psychological tension, slow character shifts, and evolving power dynamics, designed to stretch naturally into roughly 30 additional minutes of screen time depending on pacing, pauses, and visual beats. Life changed quietly. Not in fireworks. Not in headlines. Not in declarations. Quietly. Problems stopped finding her. Emails that once went unanswered were returned within the hour. Meetings that used to be postponed indefinitely were suddenly urgent. Contracts that required months of persuasion now arrived with polite follow-ups. Doors opened without explanation. People who once looked through her, eyes skimming past as if she were background noise, now stepped aside. They smiled differently. Carefully. Respectfully. Fearfully. And him? He never raised his voice. Never made demands. Never reminded her of what he'd done. That was the trick. Protection didn't come with rules. It came with expectations. At first, she told herself nothing had changed. She was still working just as hard. Still earning every win. Still negotiating every deal. He wasn't doing the work for her. He was just present. A name in the room. A shadow at the edge of negotiations. A quiet certainty that if things turned ugly, they wouldn't turn against her. That kind of security is addictive. But addiction rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as relief. The first time she noticed it, it was small. She was about to send an email, firm, unapologetic, decisive. Her thumb hovered over send. Then she paused. What would he think? She didn't ask him. She didn't need to. His voice existed in her mind now. Calm. Measured. Strategic. She softened the wording. Just slightly. She told herself it was maturity. Weeks later, she found herself checking her phone more often than necessary. Not obsessively. Just frequently. He didn't flood her with messages. That wasn't his style. When he reached out, it was precise. Dinner. 8 p.m. Be careful with the board tomorrow. Trust your instincts. Not theirs. Short. Efficient. Controlled. She started waiting for them. Timing her life around his schedule. She didn't cancel plans for him. She just avoided making plans that might conflict. There's a difference. Isn't there? When he didn't call, she felt exposed. The first time it happened, she brushed it off. He was busy. He operated in circles larger than hers. She wasn't entitled to his time. But the second time, the silence stretched longer than usual. 2 days. Then 3. She walked into a meeting without the familiar sense of invisible reinforcement. And suddenly, the room felt different. Sharper. Colder. One of the investors interrupted her mid-sentence. That hadn't happened in months. Another questioned her projections more aggressively than before. They weren't attacking. They were testing. She felt it immediately. The shield was thinner. After the meeting, she checked her phone in the elevator. Nothing. Her chest tightened, not from anger. From vulnerability. That's how power works. It doesn't chase you. It makes you afraid to walk without it. He called that night. Her phone lit up, and relief rushed through her before she could stop it. She hated that. Haven't heard from you, she said, aiming for neutral. I was observing, he replied. Observing what? You. Without me. The words landed heavier than expected. And, she asked, you handled yourself. That doesn't sound like a compliment. It is. Then why does it feel like a test? A pause. I never test you, he said. But she wasn't sure that was true. They met later that week at his apartment. Not extravagant. Understated. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Muted colors. Art that looked expensive but restrained. The kind of space that didn't need to impress anyone. He poured her a drink. You felt it, didn't you? He asked. Felt what? The difference. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. When I step back, the world recalibrates. You make it sound like gravity. In certain rooms, I am. There it was. Not arrogance. Fact. And what does that make me? She asked. He studied her carefully. That depends. On what? On whether you believe you can hold the room without me. She told herself she could. She had before him. Hadn't she? The memory felt distant now. Blurry. Before him, she fought for every inch. After him, space cleared naturally. Which version was stronger? The fighter? Or the woman who never had to fight? Her friends noticed changes she pretended not to see. You're different, one of them said over lunch. How? Calmer. That's good. Colder. She frowned. I'm focused. You're calculating. She almost laughed. That's business. No, her friend said softly. That's the influence. The invitations increased. Private dinners. Exclusive retreats. Closed-door summits. She was no longer the outsider trying to get in. She was expected. And wherever she went, his name followed. Not publicly. Subtly. Like a watermark. No one mentioned him directly. But they referenced him. Your associate. Your partner. Your alignment. She corrected them at first. We're not partners. The correction grew weaker each time. Because what were they? Not lovers in the traditional sense. Not business partners on paper. Not friends in the ordinary way. They existed in a space without labels. And unlabeled things are harder to escape. One evening, she decided not to answer his message. Just once. He had texted. Dinner. 9 p.m. No question. No, are you free? Just an assumption. She stared at it. Then locked her phone. She went out with friends instead. Laughed loudly. Drank too much. Pretended not to check her phone every 5 minutes. When she got home, there was one message. Be careful. That was all. No anger. No follow-up. No reprimand. Which was worse. The next morning, a deal she'd been negotiating for weeks suddenly stalled. No explanation. Just hesitation. She felt the shift immediately. Subtle. Intentional. She called him. You said no price, she said without greeting. There isn't. Then why did the Delmont contract freeze overnight? A pause. I don't control everything. Don't lie to me. Silence. Longer this time. Then, you wanted to see what independence felt like. And now you do. Her pulse quickened. Are you punishing me? No. Then what is this? Reality, he said calmly. Influence requires alignment. That word echoed long after the call ended. Alignment. Not obedience. Not submission. Alignment. It sounded mutual. It wasn't. She started noticing patterns. When she spent more time with him, obstacles vanished. When she pulled away, resistance increased. He never threatened. Never warned. Never demanded. The world simply responded differently. And she couldn't prove it. That was the brilliance of it. No fingerprints. No direct interference. Just outcomes. One night, standing alone in her apartment, she tried to remember the last decision she'd made without considering him. She couldn't. Her schedule revolved around his availability. Her strategy adjusted to his preferences. Even her wardrobe had shifted. Sharper lines, darker tones. Power dressing. His aesthetic. When did that happen? She confronted him on the balcony again. The same balcony where it started. Am I free? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. Do you feel free? He countered. That's not what I asked. It's the only question that matters. She stepped closer. If I walked away, she said, what would happen? His gaze didn't waver. You would succeed, he said. Relief flickered. Then he added, but it would be harder. Honest. Always honest. And if I stayed, it would be easier. There it was. The choice. Hard freedom. Or easy power. She realized something then. He hadn't built a cage. He'd built a climate. An atmosphere where she thrived. And outside of it, the air was thinner. Colder. More unpredictable. He hadn't taken her freedom. He'd redefined her comfort. And slowly, without realizing it, she stopped being free. Not because he locked a door, but because she forgot how to walk without one opening first. The final shift came quietly, as all the others had. She received an offer, massive, global, transformative. It required relocation, different networks, different alliances, a world beyond his immediate reach. She read the proposal 3 times. Her heart raced. This was what she'd always wanted. Independence on a scale he couldn't cushion. She didn't tell him immediately. For the first time in months, she sat with a decision alone. The silence was terrifying. Exhilarating. She called him 2 days later. I have an offer, she said. I know. Of course he did. In another city. Yes. A beat. And he stepped closer, voice steady as ever. Do you want my protection there? Not. Are you leaving? Not. Will you miss me? Just. Do you want my protection there? She closed her eyes. This was the moment. Power didn't chase you. It made you afraid to walk without it. Her voice was softer than she expected. I don't know. And for the first time since she met him, he didn't sound certain either. Here is a deeply expanded continuation, stretching the emotional unraveling, the psychological tension, and the aftermath into a slow-burn, cinematic 30-minute arc. The first warning came disguised as concern. Be careful who you talk to, he said. Not a command. A suggestion. Delivered gently. Almost thoughtfully. As if he were protecting her from something she couldn't yet see. She nodded. Because it sounded reasonable. In his world, information was currency. Alliances shifted. Loyalty was rented, not owned. Of course caution mattered. But the next time, the tone shifted, only slightly. Who were you having lunch with? A consultant. Name. She gave it. A pause. I would have advised against that. He didn't say why. He didn't have to. By then, she understood that his knowledge ran deeper than hers. Then came the questions. Who were you with? Why did you leave early? Why didn't you answer? Still calm. Still polite. Never accusatory. Just attentive. But something had changed. She noticed it in rooms before she felt it in herself. He began watching people instead of speaking. Tracking conversations across the room. Measuring proximity. When someone leaned in too close to her, his gaze sharpened. When she laughed too freely with someone new, he went quiet. Rooms fell silent when he entered. They always had. But now she noticed the silence differently. It wasn't respect. It was recalculation. This wasn't protection. This was ownership. And the worst part? He never forced her. He made her choose. You don't have to go, he'd say. When she mentioned a networking event he didn't approve of. You don't have to work with them. When she considered a partnership outside his circle. You don't have to answer that. When a journalist asked about her independence. He never said no. He simply made every alternative feel risky. And every risk feel foolish. She began declining invitations before he commented. She began editing herself before he reacted. She told herself it was alignment. But alignment requires equality. This felt like an orbit. The night everything collapsed didn't begin loudly. It began with a favor. Just one. He called her late. His voice was softer than usual. "I need you with me tonight." "For what?" "A meeting." "I wasn't invited." "You are now." Something in his tone made her hesitate. But she said yes. Because she always said yes. The building was unfamiliar. No signage. No doorman. Just a quiet elevator ride to the top floor. The room was dimly lit, not elegant like his events. Functional. Men she didn't recognize sat around a long table. No music. No small talk. "Sit here," he said. "Listen." She took the chair beside him. They spoke in a language she didn't understand. Fast. Controlled. Precise. Numbers were mentioned. Names she'd never heard. Territories. Leverage. Consequences. She didn't understand the words. But she understood the looks. This wasn't negotiation. This was division. And she wasn't supposed to see it. Halfway through, one of the men glanced at her. Too long. Curious. Evaluating. "She's aware?" the man asked him in English. Elias didn't hesitate. "She's loyal." The word tightened something in her chest. Loyal. Not independent. Not capable. Loyal. That's when she realized the truth. Protection wasn't something he gave. It was something he sold. And payment was due. Not in money. In silence. In alignment. In complicity. After the meeting, she followed him into the hallway. "What was that?" she asked. "Business. You told them I was loyal." "You are." "That's not the point." He looked at her then, not cold. Disappointed. "You wanted to understand my world," he said. "This isn't your world. It's a shadow of it. And I wasn't meant to see it." A pause. "No." The honesty burned. She tried to leave. "Right there." "I need air," she said, moving toward the elevator. His hand wrapped around her wrist. Not violently, but firmly. That was the first time he'd ever touched her to stop her. "Don't," he said. "I didn't agree to this." "You agreed to me." The words echoed louder than a shout. "I never agreed to be owned." "You're not owned." "Then let me leave." His jaw tightened. And that's when he finally raised his voice. Not in anger. In disappointment. "You're safe because I say so," he said. "And you leave when I say so." The hallway went silent. No witnesses. No audience. Just the truth. That was the moment love died. Not in rage. Not in betrayal. In clarity. She did leave. Not that night. But soon after. Quietly. No confrontation. No dramatic goodbye. She packed what mattered. Changed numbers. Moved apartments. Stepped out of his orbit. But safety didn't come with her. The shift was immediate. Calls went unanswered. Meetings postponed. A major investor withdrew due to strategic restructuring. A partnership dissolved without explanation. The city forgot her name. Doors closed again, harder this time. This time with memory. Because now she was known as someone who had stepped away. And power doesn't reward abandonment. It punishes it with indifference. She waited for retaliation. For anger. For public humiliation. None came. And that was worse. He didn't chase her. He didn't smear her reputation. He didn't threaten. He simply withdrew the climate. The atmosphere. And without it, she had to breathe on her own again. It was harder this time. Because she remembered what ease felt like. The final lesson of power is simple. It doesn't need you to stay. It only needs you to remember what life was like without it. And she did. Every night. At first, she missed him. Then she missed the protection. Then she realized she couldn't tell the difference. That realization terrified her. She began rebuilding slowly. Smaller projects. New networks. People untouched by his influence. It took twice as long. Cost 3 times as much. But every victory felt earned again. Raw. Real. One evening, months later, she walked into a room alone. No shadow. No recalibration. No silence falling in her favor. Someone interrupted her mid-sentence. She didn't falter. She kept speaking. Another challenged her numbers. She defended them. By the end of the meeting, the deal wasn't secured. But it wasn't dead either. It was alive because of her. Not him. Weeks later, she saw him across a gala ballroom. Different venues. Same kind of room where they'd first met. He hadn't changed. Still composed. Still gravitational. Conversations curved around him. He noticed her. Of course he did. Their eyes met. He didn't approach. Didn't signal. Didn't claim. For a moment, she felt the old pull. The memory of ease. Of doors opening without effort. Of safety defined by someone else's power. Then someone beside her asked a question about her latest project. And she answered. Without checking for him. Without adjusting her tone. Without waiting for his approval. When she looked back, he was still watching. But this time, the room hadn't fallen silent because of him. It was listening to her. Not because she was protected. Because she was capable. He gave the smallest nod. Not ownership. Not disappointment. Recognition. And for the first time, she understood something he never said. Power can shelter you. Power can shape you. Power can shrink you. But the only power that stays is the one that survives after it walks away. She left the gala before he did. Not to escape. Not to prove anything. Just because she wanted to. Outside, the night air felt thinner than his atmosphere. Colder. Unforgiving. Free. And this time, she didn't look back.